represented in ISO's contents, while the reference of ISO's contents in the real world, and software application may not. Implication. The mutual understanding between software application is anchored to ISO's contents in terms of representation, whereas the mutual understanding between human beings can refer to both ISO's contents and to the correspondence between ISO's contents and the real world. In other words, only human beings are in the position to address external questions. Now, another introduction, the notion of ISO's integration. Well, according to Magro and Goy, the mutual understanding is strictly interviewed with the notion of ISO's integration. Well, more precisely, Goy and Magro maintain that the possibility for software applications of understanding ISO's contents enable that integration on the web. Well, what is ISO integration then? Well, broadly speaking, ISO's integration is the process by which information system ontologies can semantically combine data for multiple heterogeneous information systems. So, this is the big question of my paper. How and to what extent are we entitled to integrate ISO's integration? Well, in my opinion, we have three different and possible answers to this question. I'm not sure what's my favorite answer, but I will present the three different answers anyway. So, first answer, if only those entities exist which are represented in an information system ontologies, and such entities only possess the properties that the ISOs itself recognize, then integration are not possible. This is the first answer. I'm not sure about this answer, but it's a possibility. Second answer, if information system ontologies can semantically combine data from multiple information systems, then ISO's contents may be integrated with data coming from other information systems, data that are in turn surrogates. Second chance. Well, problem. There is also a third question, which is longer. So, how and to what extent are we entitled to integrate ISO's contents? Well, let's go back to our example. The ISOs which represents all the countries in the world. And now we have also to specify that our ISOs only represents all the countries in the world. And our ISOs does not recognize the property as capital. Well, on the basis of the previous slide, we can say that only all the countries in the world exist in the ISOs. Those countries are not the real countries, but their surrogates. Those surrogates do not possess the property as a capital, although the real countries possess such a property. So let's go back to the first analogy again. According to Smith, we should maintain that as regard to the property has as capital, our ISOs countries are indeterminate. However, I suggest that such an indeterminacy improperly refers to ISOs countries, given that the ISOs does not take into account the property as a capital. Rather, those countries are indeterminate about the property has as a capital if compared to the real world whose country possess such a property. Implication. If we accept such a line of reasoning, means that the indeterminacy mentioned implies a relation between ISOs contents and the world represented by the ISOs. But if so, a chance to make our ISOs entity determinate about the property as a capital may consist in integrating the entities of our ISOs with the property as a capital that the real countries possess. But then integration from the external world would be, at least in principle, possible. Accordingly, facing the integrations require to specify whether answering by the internal resources provided by the ISOs or by the external world represented in the ISOs by surrogates. Outlining such alternatives does not imply that human beings and software application would integrate ISOs cantons in the same way. Again, the difference refers to the fact that human beings have access to the external world represented in the ISOs by surrogates, whereas software applications have not. So this is the difference, in my opinion, the only difference. Conclusion. We might conclude by observing that while for software application, ISOs integration are tied to internal resources, human beings can integrate ISOs contents in terms of internal and external resources. This might also explain why, when we look at the ISOs content, we as human beings do not see just surrogates, but also the entities represented in the ISOs. Well, this is the conclusion of my paper. There is only one thing that I want to introduce just to finish my presentation. Well, I want to go back for one moment to Smith, the first quote. According to Smith, we say that outlining an ISOs world means providing an inventory of all the entities that populate such a world. The quote, that is the starting point of my talk, is not accepted by the entire community of computer scientists. The quote and the talk assumes the closed word assumption, according to which everything that is not inferred or known to be true in the ISOs must be considered false. According to the quote, the two implications, all in those entities exist which are represented in the information system ontologies, and the entities in question possess only the properties which the information system ontologies recognize. Well, I want to remark that other IT approaches assume the incompleteness of ISOs conceptualization, and the incompleteness is formally stated as the open word assumption, according to which everything that cannot be inferred as false from an ISOs must be considered unknown. From the open word assumption, the quote, Barry Smith quote, does not hold, and consequently, 1 and 2 of this slide should be retracted. So, my perspective, my talk, my point of view is only a partial perspective on this topic. So, thank you for your kind attention, and that's all.